Please mute yourselves as you log in, or if you're already logged in, make sure that you are muted. I'll do it myself. It's just going to take me a couple of seconds and it'll stop me from delivering the training. So basically today we're going to start with, and I'm going to share my screen so you guys can follow. Give me another minute. I believe you guys can all see my screen now. Okay, I'm pretty much at the main menu of ECC. So just a recap on yesterday's session, we saw how to perform packing for inbound delivery documents generated from a shopping cart and an approved PO, of course, and also the outbound delivery documents for STO scenarios. Basically, we went over why we were performing the packing, why it was important to perform the packing properly, and not only adding the proper packaging materials, but also adding the information on the volume, dimension, and weight in the handling unit for the particular item. Now, so I'm going to go over that screen for a second here. So I'm going to log in. I'm going to use the T code ME23N just to take a look at the PO that I was reviewing yesterday. And we're going to take a look at the PO that we packed yesterday and was packed properly. Let me just find the number here quickly. Okay. I'm searching basically by PO here, and I'm going to be using this information in ECC as well as in TM. So now I'm in ECC, I'm looking at my PO, and I'm going to navigate to my inbound delivery document just to make sure that the material here, the one that I'm adding for this training, which is a generator here, is packed properly. And that packing information is reflected in TM. Okay, so this is just a brief recap of what we did yesterday. Basically, to review that we were looking as whoever has the role of the inbound coordinator, whoever's performing the task of packing, whether it's from vendor delivered goods or those that you are packing yourself because it's come from a request of an STO. You perform the same actions in ECC, whether you're doing it for a PO or an STO. So we went to the TM status tab, and I taught you guys that by accessing the document flow button here under the TM status tab for an inbound delivery or outbound, it works the same way exactly. We clicked on document flow and we saw that if the button for packing view was active, we understood that packing was performed correctly in ECC, but most importantly, that it was reflected in TM. So we would know that our goods are packed properly in TM as well, and that's how they're displayed in TM. So the button for packing view has to be active. If that is not active, you have not packed properly, or you may have packed properly for ECC, but it's not reflecting in TM, and that is something that needs to be addressed because we're only going to be planning transportation for goods that have been packed in TM. And I'll show you guys how to view that both in ECC and in TM to see that the goods are actually packed and we can begin planning our freight units. So basically from this screen under the TM status tab, and I'm still in ECC, just looking at my inbound delivery. And remember, if I'm looking at my outbound, it works the same way. If I take a look at this screen, I can already understand that the inbound delivery number that I have here has automatically generated DTRs and freight units in TM. Okay, this occurs automatically as soon as the inbound delivery is generated. These documents are also created in TM. We also see that we have further documents starting with 6.1. These are the freight orders. So by taking a look at this screenshot here, I can understand that this DTR or this freight unit has already been planned in TM. We actually have freight orders that have been generated, and you see them here, freight orders. We have 4 stages, and they're all freight forwarder delivered, which is telling me probably that this is one of those X-Works cases because there are no vendor delivered stages here. If they were vendor delivered, we could be talking about a DAP scenario or an FCA scenario where we would be seeing both the vendor delivered stages and the freight forwarder delivered stages. We even have more information as to the status of these freight orders. If we take a look at the top here, life cycle status, execution status, confirmation status, subcontracting status, we have a lot of information that is relevant to TM. Basically, we can understand here that the carrier has been assigned. So we understand that the freight orders have been assigned already a carrier. I know that's a later step in TM, but it's important for you to understand how much information you can get from this screen. We also see that the execution is partially in execution, which may mean that maybe one of these freight order stages, some events have already been planned for them. We understand that it's in process, so the planning has already occurred. If not, it would be in planning. We understand that it's in process now. And basically, there is no block set up for any of the DTR or the freight unit documents, as we see here, not blocked. So that information can all be taken right from the screen here in the inbound delivery document. We see that it's been packed properly, and we understand that from here, we can move on with the planning in TM. Now I'm going to show you a quick inbound delivery document here, quickly an inbound delivery document that hasn't been packed properly or that is not reflected as such in TM. Okay, let me just go back quickly to the ME23 end screen, and I'm going to switch to a different PO so we can have an idea of an item that may seem that it's packed in ECC because it actually is, but it's not reflecting in TM. Okay, so you guys have an idea of what that looks like. So I'm double clicking on the inbound. And again, I can see here that I have my material. I have a TM status tab as well. I can navigate to the document flow. And I see that the packing view button here is not active. So for some reason, the packing information has not gone through to TM. We can see that nonetheless, this is the training environment again, keep that in mind. The DTRs and freight units have been planned because we can see we have some freight orders here. Also, all freight forwarder delivered, no vendor stages here. We can see that if I navigate backwards and I go to the item overview, I can take a look at the packing details and see that these items have been packed properly. So in ECC, they do show here, and we have a packaging material, which is wrap bubble here. So we know it's done properly. We have a handling unit number, and we have added the information on the dimensions, weight, and volume as well. In ECC, it's done properly, but in TM, we see that if we check the TM status document flow button, we see that it has not gone through. And we can check that in TM. That's actually what we're going to do now. I'm not going to go over the packing details and how to pack because we did that in yesterday's session. You guys can view the video, which I'll send a link to after the session. But I want you guys to understand first how we can view packing details and the status of DTRs and freight units directly from your inbound delivery document. Now, a quick reminder, the packing was critical now in UNOE scenarios and STO scenarios for various reasons. We understand that the vendor gives you the list of packing details, and a lot of the times the inbound coordinators or whoever has this role in the mission to perform the packing does not add those details in the inbound delivery document. It does happen for STOs mostly because it's the mission who's in charge of everything. It's the mission who decides how things will be packed. But in the with the UNOE scenarios, a lot of the times the packing details are not displayed. If that's not done properly, we have issues in TM when planning transportation for various reasons. First, we're not going to have the accurate details of the volume, dimension, and weight of the goods that we're actually requesting a freight forwarder to transport our goods for. So basically, when we plan and we have our freight order documents, the ones we see here, starting with 6.1, they will have what we call the SOW document, the statement of work, which will not display accurately the dimensions of the goods we're transporting. And thus, when we solicit freight, we're not going to be providing the freight forwarder or carrier the proper details of the goods we're transporting. So that is definitely very important. Second of all, once we generate our freight orders that we have here, we will see in the charges tab in TM for these freight orders that if the option has been added to provide the charges or the estimated charges of these goods to be transported, and they're based on the gross volume of the goods we're transporting, we're not going to have the proper data, or actually we're not going to have any data in TM. So that needs to also be done properly for that particular reason. And now I'll show you this in TM so it's easier to understand what I'm talking about. Just a quick review now of what the inbound delivery document looks like when it's packed or not packed, and how we can see other documents here that are generated in TM. So now that we've seen that, just quickly before I move on, I'm going to just check if anyone has been added to the training here. Just quickly, I'm going to add anyone who has joined late, and make sure you guys are muted when you join in. I'm going to make sure I also mute you guys from this side. So let me log out of ECC. I think you guys, the screen is still recording, so we're fine. I'm going to get out of ECC now and log into TM. Make sure I mute the latecomers here. Okay, and I'm going to log into TM. Again, I'm always in the training environment. Okay, I believe the screen has stopped sharing here. Let me just quickly go back, and we're back on the screen sharing. All right, so those of you who are joining the session, please do not share your screen. Okay, everything else is okay. So now I'm logging into TM. Just muting some people here. And I'm logging in. In this case, I could be logging in as either a TS01, which would be a TM planner for UNOE scenarios. Let me make this screen a bit bigger here. Or I could be logging in as a TS07, who is the TM planner for STO scenarios. And basically, the actions I'm going to perform to search for my DTR freight unit document are exactly the same. All right, so first of all, I want to show you from the Overview Transportation Requirements under the ERP Logistic Integration tab, how a TM Planner TS01 or TS07, if we're talking about STO scenarios, would search for a DTR. And I'm going to use the same PO documents that I was just looking at now in ECC. Okay, so let me just make sure that I have the accurate information here. And I'm going to also show you the difference between how we know if items are packed in TM properly or not. So I'm adding my proper PO here, and I'm clicking on apply. Let me quickly mute the latecomers to the session. Guys, remember to mute yourselves as you log in. So here in TM, I have added my PO number under the original order. If this was an STO number, it would also be added here under the same field. I clicked on apply, and I see from my results page that looks very similar to what it would look like in SRM. We see that we have our DTR document, our inbound delivery document, and if we scroll to the right, we have some basic information on the life cycle status, if it's in planning, if the execution has not started, when it was created, the source location, destination location, and other details like the PO number, the delivery date, and other very basic information to let me understand if this DTR freight unit has already been planned, it's an execution or not. If I click directly on this DTR number, I can see the document in TM. And I can check, first thing I'm going to do is to realize in the document flow tab, which is usually the tab that displays all other documents that are generated in TM, I can see that I have my DTR, my inbound, my freight units, and also freight orders that are generated. So basically from this screenshot here, I understand that as we saw in ECC, this freight unit has already been planned. Okay, below that, you can see you have an item section. You can add this manually. Okay, you can change the display of how your screen looks by clicking on the icon here at the top, personalize, open personalization dialog box, and start playing around with how the sections are displayed. You see I have one column at the top, one column at the bottom for items. Okay, we can save or simply cancel depending on how you want to move these things around. And we see in the item section at the bottom that we have a handling unit next to a icon for a box. And that in TM allows me to know that the packing was performed properly in ECC and also is displayed in TM properly. So this is the one I was showing first in ECC, where we saw that the packing details button was accessible. We could click on it, and that's why now in TM I see a box here, meaning that it has a proper packaging details. Packaging material has been added properly. We see it here, the product, and the handling unit is also there. We also see the dimensions, gross volume, cubic meters, the gross weight, and all the details belonging to the packing that we performed in ECC correctly. Below the handling unit line, we have the product line. If you guys do not see the box here, that means that the item has not been packaged properly and it should not be planned in TM, okay? We should always have the packaging done properly. So we see that in this one, everything looks good and everything is done properly. We can go to the General Data tab. We're still looking at our DTR document. Always at the top left, you'll have information on what you're looking at. So we see DTR linked to the inbound 79972. We have under the quantity section the proper packaging details, so we know that it's been added correctly. We can see the Incoterm as well, X works, as we thought when we saw that we only had freight forwarder delivered freight orders. And basically, these are very important tabs. The document flow tab, general data tab, the business partner tab will also give us information as to who the shipper is, which is in cases of UNOE is always linked to the vendor, and the consignee, which is the final destination for the mission that is receiving the goods. In this case, it's going to Mali. We also have the locations, dates, and times, which will provide us with some basic information as to source destination, source location. Okay, so this is just a brief overview of what the document looks like, the DTR document looks like. Also to understand if it was properly packed, and very important as we go on and we check the freight orders. I'm going to move on to this freight order right now just to show you what the SOW document looks like for an item that has been properly packed. And then I'm going to show you one that hasn't been properly packed, so you see the difference. Okay, so basically if you see here, the gross volume, gross weight details were added properly, and we should have when we access our freight order document, which is the result of planning the freight unit. When we access these documents, what we should have under the tab for output management that we actually have here, the one that's selected on screen, when we click on the SOW document here, short form, and we click on document preview, this is the document we're going to be attaching to the solicitation process for the freight forwarder. So when we raise a shopping cart for freight, this is the document we can attach there. This document can be downloaded, as you see here. It can also be edited offline if you need to add further details, because this basically shows that there's a requirement for transportation. It links the freight orders, as you can see here, to the inbound delivery and the PO. It also shows the type of Incoterm that we're selecting that we have added to the shopping cart, the origin and destination location. We have our packaging information right here, pallet, our handling unit number, and the information on the weight, volume, and dimensions of the goods that we're transporting. This information you see here would not be there if we haven't packed properly. So when we start the solicitation process for freight, we wouldn't have these details properly in the SOW document. When you download it, you can add notes. If you have anything else to add, you can also take out any information that you believe shouldn't be added into the document when you attach it to the shopping cart for freight. So just so you know, this is an estimation that is generated from the transportation proposal. This is basically for us to attach just to request from a freight forwarder transportation from a specific location to a destination location, and we're providing details on the goods and how they're packaged. Okay, basic cargo readiness date, which is the delivery date we see here, 20th December, and the value of the goods. Okay, again, once you download this form, you can edit it as you see proper. You can add notes to it. And I know there was an issue, or there is a continuing issue with the multi-level packing. Yesterday, I only showed you about the single line packing. You could always either pack all your items into one single packaging material and identify the total volume, weight, and dimensions of those goods. You can also do that by hand if you're having any trouble with the packaging details being transferred to TM. If you're having any trouble with the multi-level packing and that can't be reflected in ECC, you could always download this SOW and indicate those dimensions manually. You also have the information on the consignor, which is the vendor, the origin location, and consignee, which is the mission where the goods are going to, and the address as well. Okay, so basically that's what the SOW would look like if packing has been performed properly. And this should be the document that you then attach to the shopping cart for freight. Okay, I'm just checking quickly. No one else is joining the session. Everyone seems to be muted, so we're okay. So basically, that's what I wanted to cover first to show you guys why packing was important. We didn't go into the details of packing because we did that yesterday. We're looking at the impact of packing properly done. We saw how the item showed with a nice little box of packaging, and we see that the SOW reflects those details as well in the section here that I'm displaying on screen right now. Okay, now what we're going to do is, instead of viewing this one, we're going to go into, I don't want to show you, I could show you the charges tab here. I just think because it's the training environment that the estimated charges are not displayed. But basically in production, if you've done your packaging correctly and the formula selected for the estimated charges that TM is displaying is set to gross volume, you would be able to see in this screen of charges an estimated charge line here that would be giving you an estimated charge based on the gross volume that you've indicated in the packing. Okay, this estimation can also be changed to the transportation rates. So it's something that you can select in production as how you want the system to display estimated charges for the goods that you're going to be that are going to be transported. In this case, we have the gross volume is our estimated charge. Because it's the training environment, we may have an issue with why it's not displaying the estimated charges, but you guys would have this in production nonetheless. Eventually, once we get the answer from the solicitation process for the shopping cart for freight, we would have the actual charges that the freight forwarder is delivering to us that we would have to add to each of these legs, each of these freight orders for every transportation lane. In the long run, and this is why TM is going to become very important and is already very important, we will be able to cross-reference the historical data that we have in the system that is giving to us the estimated charges with the actual charges for transportation for vendors and freight forwarders. And in the long run, in a year time, 2 years time, and so on, we will have more accurate data in terms of cost per transportation, and we can become a smarter entity, or we can have a smarter system that will allow us to view the actual cost. And like that, we can optimize transportation in the future for the goods that we are receiving in our mission or that we're transferring from mission to mission. Okay, so I'm going to exit this freight order, and now I'm going to display one that wasn't packed properly, or at least it's not reflected as such in TM. So I'm going to just change the PO here. And again, I'm only displaying now POs, but nonetheless for STOs, it works exactly the same way. So I've changed the original order here to the one ending in 47. Before it was the one ending in 45. I've clicked on apply, and I have a new DTR document here. I can click on that one, and I'm going to visualize now a DTR document that hasn't been packed properly in ECC. So the inbound delivery document wasn't packed properly. And you can see in the item section, we don't have our handling units. We don't have our little icon here with the box. We have just the item separately. Okay, we see that the gross volume, dimension, and weights is not reflected as it was reflected before with the cubic meters. And if we go to the general data tab, we can see that in the quantity section, we're missing here our gross volume, which has not been added. For some reason, the packing wasn't done properly, so this one should be edited in ECC. The packing should be repeated, and then once you have the actual gross volume, and when you look at your items, you should see your box here for the handling unit. And that's how you know that it's been packed properly. Then the same thing would happen if I go to document flow and I'm looking for my freight orders. For example, here they're all planned. I can click on this and see the SOW document should not reflect the proper dimensions. So I'm going to navigate to the tab Output Management, where I would see the SOW document, and I can see here that the SOW, again, still gives me all the information of what this freight order is linked to, the inbound, the PO, and so on. It still gives me the details on the Incoterm and origin location, destination location, but it doesn't give me the packaging details. It doesn't give me the weight, the dimensions, volume, and so on that it showed before. It only gives me the value of the goods and the cargo readiness date. That's why I wanted to show you both documents and to see the difference between something that was packed properly and something that wasn't, and how that could affect in the long run how the estimated charges are calculated, how when we solicit freight, we are not soliciting or we're not providing the accurate information in our SOW document. Thus, we're not really doing the process properly. This is for POs that have a DTR and a freight unit that were already planned. Again, a quick reminder, we know that they're planned because we have, besides our, sorry, let me navigate to the DTR because it's easier to see here in the DTR document. And I'll go to the document flow there. Very good. We see that we have our DTR inbound freight unit in all our freight orders. I'm going to go now to a PO that has not been planned. Okay, so you can see the difference between the two. And then we're going to go into the planning process. Okay, in the meantime, while I look for my PO, if you guys have any questions, please use the chat to write your question. I'll take a look at it and see if we can answer that. If not right now, maybe at the end of the session. If I don't know the answer to it, I'll get back to you guys in an email. Okay, so now I'm switching and I'm using the PO ending in 51. I'm clicking on apply. I get my DTR number. I can click on this and I'm going to check to see if this DTR has been planned, right? So in this case, I only have my DTR, my inbound, and my freight unit. So I understand that this one has not been planned. No planning has occurred. I also see that the item has not been packed properly. So basically, I shouldn't plan this freight unit. Now, I've tried to pack this one before. Still, the training environment is giving me some issues in terms of reflecting it in TM. So I'm going to move on and plan this one anyway, just to show you guys how the planning is performed, how the planning profile is set, and how that works, even though I wanted to stress that you shouldn't be planning for items that have not been packed properly in ECC. Okay, so you guys can either take note of this number or how we can just add a click on it, sorry, and we can view our freight unit document. Basically, the freight unit document, and let me navigate to, again, the document flow tab. The freight unit document represents the set of goods that are being transported, right? So there's been, in this case, this is coming from a shopping cart for goods. The PO was approved and I have an inbound. The goods have been packed properly, and now there's a request for transportation for these goods. These goods are identified by the freight unit number, which means conceptually it stands for all goods that can be transported together. So what that means is that when I'm planning transportation, I could combine these goods, these that are represented with the freight unit 2599, with other goods in other freight units that are probably following the same transportation route, coming from the same origin destination to the same destination location. But that's not necessarily determining how I can plan or not. I can also combine freight units that are coming from different origin, or that are going to different destination locations, as long as they meet somewhere in between or at the end or at the beginning. We could always combine transportation proposals for goods that are being transported so we can optimize on transportation. Okay, the idea of what I'm about to show you now is not that you just go into the cockpit and start planning randomly. It's that you learn how you can optimize your transportation and like that save on cost. The system will always provide you with estimated cost based on gross volume, which is what we saw on the charges tab for the freight order. The estimated cost on transportation, we're going to see that in a bit, how that is displayed by the system as well. So we want to teach you not only how to plan, but also to be smart about how you're planning and how you're combining these freight units. So right now I'm going to take this freight unit and I'm going to go to the transportation cockpit and I'm going to plan it. So I'm just going to close now these windows, and I'm going to go back to the screen that I was in before where I was searching for my DTR. You guys can either add your PO here. If you guys are TS01s or TS07s, this would be an STO. Once you click on apply, you have your DTR number here. You can simply select this line or various lines, click on the transportation cockpit, and that will take you directly to the transportation cockpit so that you can see this particular freight unit. Now, the way it should be done basically is to go to the planning tab, go to the transportation cockpit, and then here it will take you first probably to the planning profile if you haven't set it up, or if you have set it up and already set it as a default to see your freight units for XWorks Incoterms or for FCAs or DAP Incoterms, you would go to the transportation cockpit and only view those freight units that are linked to a specific Incoterm. So to understand this screen, the one that we're looking at now called Profile and Layout Sets, which is basically the planning profile page, what you do here is you set up your planning profile for Incoterms FCA, DAT, FOB, XWorks, or DAP. You set them up separately and you access each one of them individually so that when you go to the transportation cockpit, you only see freight units that have that specific Incoterm assigned to them. So you're only combining freight units and planning transportation for freight units that have the same Incoterm. Not necessarily going to the same place, not coming from the same place, but that eventually can meet at some point in the transportation route that you select. The only thing that will limit your combination possibilities in the transportation cockpit when we go there is a 7-day time frame. So the date of delivery has to be within that 7-day time frame for you to be able to combine one freight unit with another. Let me take a quick look at the chat just in case there's anything there or anyone has added a question in the chat. So bear with me for a second. So nothing there yet. All right, we can always leave the questions for the end of the session. I'm just admitting 3 more people that are joining us right now, and I'm going to make sure I have them all muted before I continue. I hope you're all following what we're doing right now and you know where we are in TM. Now, if you see here, this again is the training environment and the screen that I'm showing now. We have quite a mess in terms of planning profiles, right? We have students that have been setting up their profiles and practicing, so we have tons of different planning profiles all set up. Even one of them here that I set up as a default in one of my previous trainings. So you guys understand how this works. And I'm not going to delete anyone else's planning profile right now. So the planning profile has to be set up first. Now, this is only set up once. Okay, this is only set up once, and once it's set up, it stays there. And all you have to do is click on the different profiles. These are the ones I set up in other trainings. For example, if I want to see freight units with FCA, DAT, and FOB Incoterm, I just select this line, go and continue, and I will see in the cockpit, for example, if I do that, it'll take me to the transportation cockpit with all the freight units to be planned that have FCA, DAT, or FOB Incoterms. So in this case, I don't see anything. It could be because there are none, or it could be because there's an issue with the profile. We'll see. You guys can navigate back to the planning profile by clicking on Change Profile Selection and selecting it directly from here, or simply going back to the main screen with Profile Selection Screen. Okay, we have one here. For XWorks, I can select that one, click on continue, and I should be able to see the ones related to XWorks. So in this case, I can. All right, so that means that I have all these freight units that still have to be planned. Okay, they're all pending planning, and they're all XWorks Incoterm. You see here, I have the planning profile for XWorks, standard layout, and all my freight units that still need to be planned. I set my profile up in a way that I can always see my freight unit linked to my original order, original delivery. So I see which one I'm planning for what PO, what inbound. Okay, I'm going to show you guys this a bit, but I want to go back to my profile selection. And I also want to explain how to set up this profile selection here first. Okay, so to set up your profile, you first click on New. And this is very important. Once the line is highlighted, what you have to do, basically, you can add your description first, and say here, for example, webcast training, just so I know it's this one, and I'm going to set it up for XWorks Incoterms. The first thing you do is go to the planning profile column here, and you set up the planning profile for UNOE scenarios. If we were doing it for STO, we would be setting it up for STOs. We click on the one for UNOE because the other ones are linked to vendors. For freight forwarders here, the one that says dummy, and the one for vendors is the one that actually says vendor delivered. So we click on UNOE. We have our line here. I think I just lost the line. Let me make sure I'm not doing this twice. Okay, hold on. Let me just add a new one here because I lost the line. So I'm setting up the planning profile again for UNOE. And I'm selecting this one. Now we have it here. The freight unit, again, the freight unit column you have here, you have to set up the proper profile here under freight unit. And here is where you have to be careful to select the proper planning profile, right? We have a series of them. You have one for XWorks, which is quite easy because it actually says XWorks there. So if I select this one, what I'm going to be selecting and what I'm going to be telling the system is that I want to see only my XWorks Incoterms. Okay, and I'm going to set it up here, webcast training, so I know it's mine. Okay, you can save it just in case it disappears. And you have now your webcast training for XWorks freight unit delivered and UNOE scenarios. You can also add your freight order selection profile here too. What that will do is show you all the freight orders that you have already planned as well, and they will be displayed in the cockpit. I usually don't like to add that one because I want it to be blank and only show me the ones I'm planning for now. Okay, I think someone just unmuted themselves, so let me just take care of that. Okay, if you guys have a question, please write it in the chat first, and if you want to speak up, you can unmute yourself. Right. Is there a question?
You have a good receipt, right? You know, when you go to ECC, you see the amount ordered, the amount delivered, and then the amount invoiced. Who populates that part of Emoja? Is it the receiving or what?
Okay, we're talking here about a UNOE scenario or an STO scenario?
Because remember, they are linking everything to the central.
Okay. Angel?
Yes.
Okay, I'm not sure if somebody's asking me a question or they're just talking amongst each other. So I'm just gonna.
Yeah, my chief was discussing. Let me put my two speakers.
Okay. All right. Very good. So I'm just gonna continue with the planning profile setup. So basically, we have the one for XWorks, the one we set up just now. And we can set up a new one for FCA just to show you guys which one that would be. So again, planning profile is always the same. We always select the UNOE. If it was STO, we would see an option here to select the STO instead of the UNOE. So we basically just click on that, set it up here, go to the freight unit column and select a different now Incoterm scenario. So the planning profile is going to be set up now for forwarder delivered. This one here, the one that I'm selecting here, is the one for FCA, DAT, and FOB Incoterms. So we can always put that there, DAT and FOB Incoterms, and I'm going to put here webcast training. Not webcats, but webcast. Okay, so we can save that as well, and there you go. Your profiles are set. You only have to do this once. Okay, once this is set up and saved, your profile is there. Okay, now I'm going to go back to the one I created a while back ago because I want to see the XWorks, because I know that the DTR that I was checking before for my freight unit was XWorks. I know that it's the UNOE profile, and I know that I'm looking at the one for XWorks here, so I can select it. I can even set it as my default if I want to. Save and then continue. When I continue, I'll go to my planning profile, and now I only see freight units that are Ex work scenarios, right? So the only freight forwarders are going to be delivering these goods, and I haven't planned anything for them yet. So you know how this works. This is divided into 4 sections, the transportation cockpit, one for freight unit, one for freight order, and below you have one here that is called trucks, which is not functional right now. And then you have one for overview, which is very useful, especially when when we want to look at maps for transportation routes. Okay, I'm going to show you how to set this one up right now as well. Okay, so basically we're focusing only on this section for freight units. You can maximize your screen by clicking here on the maximize button, and it gives you a much better view of what you're looking at. Okay, you can manage your columns in a way that will help you see documents and cross-reference documents. So you can do this manually, one by one, as I'm doing now, or you can basically just go to your setup here, personalization, and set it up in terms of what columns are displayed, which ones you want first or last, and you can add new columns that are also very important for you. For example, the inbound or the PO columns may not be there originally. They may be under the available columns but not displayed. Make sure you select them and you move them over. That's what I did, and that's why I have my original order. If you don't want a column, you just select it, move it out of the way. And now I should have my freight unit, PO, and inbound one after the other. Okay, once I save. We also have the stages. I can add here if I want to see delivery, right? If I want to see maybe delivery dates. So we have original delivery category, description. Let me go with dates instead. Maybe date has more options. So earliest requested date, latest requested date, which is the unloading location. So I'm interested in seeing that. So I want to push that over. Same thing for the planned dates or the loading time. So I can see that as well. Maybe I want to add this one here too. Maybe I just want to add them all. Okay, so you can always select them all and move them over. Once you click on save in your cockpit, now you will have, besides your documents, you will also have the latest request date, earliest request date, so you know the dates that you can combine together. So today is the 11th. I have the dates here that you can also manage and sort in ascending or descending if you want to see the latest first for the 20th. Okay, so basically you can manage this cockpit the way you want it and have it displayed the way you want it. If you realize all the items display here as unpacked, at least all the ones that I have here are unpacked. And I think basically because it's the training environment and we don't have, there's an issue between the packing done in inbound in ECC and the one reflected in TM, but basically we're going to move on nonetheless. You guys can also see that you have more columns to the right. So basically you can tamper with this as much as you want. It's probably also useful to have your source location, destination location, which you can add clicking on the personalization icon to see where things are going. So maybe we can add here source and see if we have any column on that. Or maybe we can add location. So basically you can add the information here, loading location, okay? And maybe we go with loading location description. Maybe we want the unloading location as well. So we have the unloading location description, which may be also very useful for us to know where things are going, where things are coming from. And when I click on OK, I have them here. See, we know where it's coming from, where it's going, and now I know that anything I combine is going to make a little more sense. You can search for your freight unit if you know it directly from here. You can search for your PO or your inbound directly from this field here where the magnifying glass is as well. But you need to make sure that your column for the PO and the inbound is displayed. If it's not displayed and you add that information, you're not going to see anything. Okay, so basically if I went back to the PO that I was looking at before in TM, the one that I'm planning for now, and I add it here, I should have that PO displayed here or highlighted in yellow somewhere within the number of freight units that are displayed here. Now, sometimes if you don't find it, it's because you don't have the amount of freight units that are displayed, or maybe you have the wrong number. So always tamper around with this and see if I'm going to add my freight unit, for example, now and see if maybe it can find it here directly. Whenever it does find it, what it will do is highlight the section in yellow. Okay, so in this case, I keep getting 0 matches for the freight unit that I'm trying to plan for. So basically, it could be a reason that we have too many freight units displayed at once. It shouldn't happen in your case in production, but in the training environment, we have tons of people creating freight units. You can also search for freight units by highlighting the column here and selecting custom filter and adding the filter for that freight unit here, or we select the option for contains and add your number here for the freight unit. And if it shows up, and we can click on OK, and maybe that'll display it. So in this case, it's giving me 0 matches all the time. That could be because that freight unit was not, doesn't fit into the amount of search results that I'm displaying here. So one way around that could be if you close your cockpit and you go to the ERP Logistic tab, Transportation. Remember at the beginning, I was telling you that if you search for your PO, which in this case is this one, you click on apply and you have your DTR number, you can simply select this line, go to the transportation cockpit, and once that takes you to the planning profile, once again, it'll take you to the planning profile that you have set up. You simply select the line that you're looking for here, XWorks, click on continue, and now it should filter the results of the freight units by the freight unit that you're looking for. So now my freight unit should be here. Okay, if it's not here, then I'm having issues that I didn't plan for, but my freight unit now should show up in this search. And there it is. Okay, so I'm going to maximize this screen. So that will be very helpful for you if you have tons of freight units displayed, and by any chance it's not displaying your freight unit when you're searching for it. It may be because you have too many results on screen. The way to go about it is to simply look for your PO, select your DTR number directly from the line, and go to the cockpit from there. That will reduce the amount of freight units that are displayed and will also make sure that it adds your freight unit, the one you're looking for here. If I wanted to search by PO, I can also do that here, and it'll show me the PO number and the freight unit linked to it. So the 51 right next to the freight unit. If you do so through here and you say original order, I want to custom filter and see my order number here contains, and I want to filter by PO instead of freight unit because I don't know the freight unit number. You can do that as well. And then all other freight units and POs disappear from your screen and you only have the ones you're planning for. Okay, so here you go. These would be the ones that are displayed. I can minimize the screen so you know we're still in the transportation cockpit screen, and then you perform your planning. So let's discuss a bit on what I'm doing here before I perform my planning. Basically, I'm going to maximize the screen again. Basically, what I'm doing is planning transportation for goods, the goods that are identified here as the freight unit 2599, that are going from a source destination, which is the loading location here, Hyundai Motor Company, and the unloading location in Mali. Okay, final destination. Now, sometimes you may have the issue, like we have now, that you have two freight units displayed, the same exact number duplicated. It's not a mistake. The problem here is that maybe when raising the shopping cart, and this is something that we're stressing a lot lately, when you're raising a shopping cart and you're adding the location under a DAP Incoterm or an XWorks Incoterm, what you're telling the system is that the delivery or pickup location is one particular location, but the system may have another pickup or delivery location already loaded as master data. So what the system is telling you when you're planning in TM is that basically there's a stage missing between the location that you added in the XWorks location or the AP location and the one that the system has for the vendor. So it's connecting the vendor location with that location you added under the Incoterm location. So basically, you shouldn't be adding any locations under XWorks or DAP Incoterms. Only the handover location should be added when adding a when selecting an FCA Incoterm, and that's how we can avoid this duplication of freight units. Basically, if this happens, there's not a problem in the sense of planning. It's just going to maybe confuse you as to why you need to plan two stages, one from the Hyundai Motor Company to the factory, if maybe it is the same location, maybe it isn't, but you should just have one line here. Again, if you're planning and you have duplicates of freight units, you should always make sure that you select both those lines. Because if not, it's not going to plan for the first stage and it's only going to plan starting from your second stage. So they should always be selected. If by any chance I want to combine freight units, let's say if I wanted to get rid of my filter, and I wanted to search for several freight units and I wanted to combine them together. Okay, so maybe we can click on that and have all our options displayed. You can do that as well. You could always just select different freight unit lines here, for example, like this, as long as they fall within the 7-day range, when they all do. They're all, delivery is set for 20th December. You can always select individually these lines and say, you know what, they're all coming from the same place, all going to the same place, so why don't I combine all these freight units together and transport them together? In this particular case, you're basically getting one item and you're using a means of transportation, whether it's air, sea, or truck, to transport one item. So it's probably smarter to transport them all together. So to do that, all you do is just select each one of those freight units that you want to transport together, and then click on transportation proposals to combine them in one single transportation route. So all these goods are combined together. If you don't want to combine them and you just want to plan for one, again, as we did before, we can search for our PO. We have our POs here, and all you do is select your freight unit. If it's duplicated, remember to select both of them. And then you go to transportation proposals, and the system will take you to, according to the master data that we have, which is basically the one we compiled from all the entities, based on historical data, based on the vendors that you select, the destination locations that you usually use, handover locations that are usually used throughout the history of your entity. And okay, now we have an error here in the system, so that can happen sometimes in the training environment. Let me just quickly jump right back to where I was. And also selecting my planning profile, remember that. You click on continue, and let me go to the cockpit and look for my PO again. Let me see if we have any questions in the meantime. Nothing there. Perfect. Okay, again, I'm searching for my...
Sorry, Brian, there was a question from Gabriela. Maybe you don't see it. It was at the end, so.
Okay, yes, thanks, Sasha. Okay, I see here. All right, thank you, Sasha. So when planning, you suggest to always exclude the freight order selection, right? Okay, I personally do, basically because the way you see the freight order section that is displayed here on the right is empty right now. I can show you the difference, and maybe if the system works with me, I'm going to go back to my selection profile, and I'm going to go to this selection profile, and I'm going to add the freight order profile here. Okay, so you see the difference between the two. If I also select and I say, okay, I want to add the XWorks planning profile for the freight order selection profile as well, and click on save. Now, when I navigate to the cockpit, I should also see the freight orders that were planned. In this case, there weren't any, so that's fine. So it could look the same way whether you have it selected or not. But if several freight orders are being planned during the day, you're going to have them displayed here on your screen. Now, they're going to be displayed with the 6-1 number, which you know they're already planned for. But if you, let's say you have 30 or 40 of them, they're going to maybe confuse you between the ones that are planned and the ones that are not planned yet. That's why I usually leave it blank. But you can select it and add it just the way I did. It's not a problem. It's a matter of choice. So you can add this one here too. And now you have your freight order profile added as well. Okay, so that's basically why I choose not to do it, basically because I want to have it blank here and only see the ones that I haven't planned for. Okay, thanks, Gabriela. Thanks, Sasha, for that. If you have any other questions, let me know. Okay, so now, again, we're still in the planning profile. I was looking for my PO here. I selected both the lines. I also explained why we would have both lines. Again, very quickly, and this is something I showed in my first session. This session is flying by the way. So if you guys don't mind if I extend it 10 minutes, I can. okay, just to show you the final result of this. You guys can also add, and excuse me if I'm going fast through this, but since it's being recorded, you guys can always go back to this. The page layout option here at the top, if you navigate to the UN map layout, what this allows you to do, this will make your last section here at the bottom here, this last section at the bottom, a bit more useful for you, right? Because now it's showing you the UN map, which will actually display the routes that you're about to plan transportation for. If I update the map with the selected entry, so I clear all details and I add the selected entries, when I go to the bottom here and I select the tab for map, what it will do is display the route that I'm about to plan transportation for. Okay, and once the map displays, you'll see what I'm talking about. You have two tabs, the map and the map display. Map display will show you route by route, while the map tab will show you the full stage from origin to destination. So if I click on the eye icon, we can see where it's coming from, where it's going right from the map. And that's based on the selection that I just made here. So you know that what you're planning is coming from this origin location. And it actually, if you hover over the button here, it shows you Hyundai Motor Company and also the final destination location, the Mali shipping point. You can also zoom in to the map and see that at the beginning you have two stages, very, very small here. You can see the two basic stages from the actual origin location, and that's what I was talking about. We have the location of Hyundai Motors is different from the location that we added in the Incoterm location, and that's why it's calculating or pre-calculating these two steps before the final transportation to Mali. Okay, so basically that's what I wanted to show you with the use of the map. Let's go back to the top now and click on transportation proposal and cross my fingers that the system doesn't crash a second time on me. And now we get some results. I'm checking the chat again. I think somebody has written something there. Okay, nothing there. So it's taking a bit long here. May crash one more time. Let's see. No, perfect. Okay, so the system is now returning data for my transportation proposals. Okay, the transportation proposal in the map that was shown before, but now it's dividing it into stages. These stages are what we also know as freight orders. Okay, every single stage in our transportation proposal is reflected here with means of transportation, where it's coming from, where it's going to, and also we'll see as I move to the right, the cost of this transportation. Again, it's training environment, so the cost may not make a lot of sense to you. And this is master data and information. Basically, it's just $1, 1 kilometer. There's a one-to-one relationship there. But these, again, are just estimated costs based on the historical data that was added to TM. Okay, it's not reflecting the actual cost of the transportation. Once you solicit the carrier that is going to transfer your goods, that will be the actual cost that is returned to you. Remember, the SOW is reflecting the cost of the goods. You're only adding the information of origin location to destination location. You're not reflecting in the SOW the cost of transportation. That's not there. Okay, so the carrier that's transporting your goods will not have visibility on your estimated cost for transportation. They will only have the route that you are proposing in terms of origin to destination. You're not going to display to them the stages that they're going to follow, if they're going to go through sea or through air. This is basically just for you to have an estimation of what it would cost if we select transportation by sea or transportation by air. And this will help us in the long run to understand if we're spending too much money by using one carrier or another, by choosing one means of transport or another. That's the whole point of TM. And that's why when you're planning transportation, you should do so smartly, right? So you should optimize transportation proposals. You should look through all the proposals you have here on screen, whether they have 4 stages, 5 stages, 2 stages, and basically select the best option based on, and if I scroll down here, you can see, you can do so based on cost, you can do so based on duration, you can do so based on the distance as well. So you have several ways of selecting. You see here the freight order estimation cost. You can either sort by ascending or descending order to see if it's going to cost you more or less depending on the proposal you're selecting. Basically, by default, the system will always show you the proposals from 1 to 20, always 20 proposals in one shot. You can also change that and get more in one shot, but 20 I think is more than enough. Every time you go back to your transportation cockpit and plan again, you're going to see that you have different proposals, okay, based on what the freight units that you're selecting. Or if you're selecting the same ones, but you're generating more and more proposals, you'll get different results. If we scroll to our left a little bit, we can also see that we have some more details on the, and let me go back up, on the cost of transportation here as well. And again, it's a shame that I have to keep scrolling right and left because I maximize the screen so much for you guys to see that I'm constantly have to go from one to another, but I think this helps you understand. So we should have some more data based on the kilometers, duration as well. We should have some more info here, but basically this is what we're getting right now. Basically also because you can filter and change the display of your columns here. If you click on the personalization icon, again, every screen has this personalization icon where you can select the columns that are probably available but not displayed. The ones that are displayed right now are basically the ones that we're looking at: source location, carrier, vehicle, destination location. So if these are the ones that are useful for you, that's the ones you can select and display. If not, you can always go by distance, latest acceptable pickup date, loading start date, unloading, vessel. I mean, there's tons of options here if you want to set duration or distance, and you want to add those here as well. You want to see that as basically probably your first columns, and you click on save. Now you'll see that at the beginning, I have the columns on duration and distance as well here, and that may help me in terms of selecting a better transportation proposal. You can also filter, defining a filter up here by means of transportation or any other drop-down option that you have here. And you can basically define your filter. If you want to search only by means of transport air or means of transport sea, you can also identify that here, okay, by adding one or the other, clicking on OK, and it will only provide you the results of the ones you're looking for. In this case, they're all by sea. Something that's very important as well, based on the locations that are added in the shopping carts, the master data locations, the time, for example, the date, the latest date for delivery here is based on the date that is added into the inbound delivery document. If by any chance it needs to be updated because the transportation now has been delayed, you have to make sure that it's updated in the inbound delivery document before you plan for it. Once you plan it, you're going to have to delete the freight orders one by one, and then you're going to have to change the delivery date in the inbound delivery. So that should all be done first before you perform your planning. If the dates are very short, the distance is very short between the delivery date and today's date. For example, now we have from the 11th to the 20th, we have quite enough time. So it's going to display routes by sea. But if, for example, we only had a day or two for the delivery date to be met, instead of having only sea, we would have air transportation proposals. And maybe you wonder, this is too expensive. Why don't I have sea transportation proposals if this is actually meant for the 25th of December and we're on the 1st of December? Make sure that you take a look at the delivery date and make sure that the delivery date reflects that transportation end date here. If I maximize this column, it should reflect the accurate date. If not, it's always going to show you the fastest means of transportation possible, whether it's air or sea. Okay, I see we have questions in the chat. On the inclusion of freight order selection profile in our planning profile, please. In the column freight order selection profile, we are supposed to select a profile starting with. Okay, so in the column for freight order, okay, I'm going to go right back to that. Okay, Marco. So just give me a second. Let me finish my transportation proposal here. I'm going to select it. And then I'll go back to the transportation cockpit because that's basically the last step in the planning that I wanted to show you guys. Okay, let me just move over to the right completely so that I can see the box here to select. So let's say I'm selecting my first transportation proposal because it's the best one for me. For this specific freight unit, I'm going to have 4 stages, which means 4 freight orders, 3 by truck, 1, 2, 3, and 1 by sea. Okay, the main carriage is going to be by sea. So I'm going to go with accept planning. And now I should go back to the cockpit and see my 4 freight orders linked to the freight unit. And you see now that I have more than 1 duplication. Now I have 3 duplications based on the new freight orders that have just been planned. Okay, it already took into consideration the first one from vendor location to the factory. So it only duplicated, or it only multiplied my freight units by the amount of new stages that it hasn't planned for. Okay, so before I go to the planning profile, Marco, just one quick review here before. I know we're already 7 minutes over, but I'm sure you guys don't mind as long as we finish this correctly. Right now, the freight orders are not completed. When you see the numbers $sign and a 1 here, these freight orders are not yet completed until I click on save. All right, I can still change my mind and go back to planning. But if I do that, I have to make sure that I select all the duplications, triplications, or whatever of my same freight unit number and go back to transportation proposals. This will again take me back to the screen I was in before. I can select a different proposal and these freight orders will change. I can also now take a look at my new transportation proposal route. If I select my freight unit, update my map, clear the map and add the selected entries, and go down to the section below. And if I click on the eye icon, now I see the final transportation proposal route, okay, based on the one that I'm planning for. If I go to the map display, remember, you will display route by route. So if I want to check my first route here, you'll have the first display. Sometimes it's so zoomed in that it'll give you a look like this, but that's basically your first stage, and so on. You can move down to your next stage, Seoul factory to Incheon port, and you'll have that here as well, only leg by leg to understand which ones are your legs individually. If you want to see your main carriage, the same thing. You click on that, and below your map will display that main transportation lane here by sea. Okay, so that's how that works. If you're happy with it, you simply click on save, and now you'd have your transportation freight orders saved. Okay, before I do that, I don't want to plan this one. I'm going to go back to my transportation cockpit just to make sure that I'm answering your question here, Marco. Okay, again, very important deselection profile. It seems like it's a quick step. See, it tells me that unsaved data may be lost. That's fine. So then you know that you haven't done anything in terms of proposals. Marco, you wanted to know about the line here, right? So we have a column for freight unit selection profile and a column for freight order selection profile. The options, when I select them, are basically the ones that are available here, right? So if I select this option for freight order selection profile, and here we go, you see that it says FO, right? So these are always going to be the FOs. So, and see that in the bottom you have the FU, but look at the right description. You see troops. So even if this one just says FO, maybe the other one should say FO as well, because that may be a bit confusing. But these are linked to the troops transportation. What you want to do is link it to the UNOE transportation profile. That's why you have to pay attention to these, even if it says freight unit here. Okay, so select the one. Okay, I don't see that, nothing else in the chat. So I think this is where the confusion comes in from, right? You see the FO, you see the FU, but what we're selecting is this one here. Okay, so XWorks or FCA DAT DAP, or at the bottom, when non-DAP, this would be for freight forwarder delivered, and the bottom one here, UNOE vendor delivered, would be to see all DAP planning profiles. So eventually I would select this one for XWorks for the freight order.
Ryan, if I may, sorry, and it's good that you clarified this because I think Marco is asking because we are receiving a bit of confusing information from the hub support that apparently the information was provided by Nicole. I can paste, if you don't mind, I will just see if I can paste this. Yeah, I don't know if you can display it. This is the list of profiles with full selection of freight order also. And you will see there that, yes, as you said, this FO is a bit confusing because it says apply to troops. So
Exactly.
I have pasted for you to have it a profile that was provided by Hub. And yesterday we discussed and we were not really sure, but it's very good that it's clarified.
So
Because,
thank you. I'm going to take a look.
yeah,
I'm going to take a
Nicole
look at
was
that. But
sending.
sorry,
I
Sasha,
was,
you were saying?
yeah, I was just saying this was provided, I think, by Nicole to Hub. So maybe it would be good to clarify. Just because of this description, we are a bit confused on the profiles.
Okay, so I'm going to take a look at that in a bit. All right, let me just go through here. But if you see, even for the one for the freight unit column, the one that I was selecting before, the FO here also shows up, and then you have the FU, but the UNOE description is correct here. So if I switched, even if I wanted to switch right now, and I know this is the training environment, but if I wanted to select XWorks for these FOs, I couldn't because it doesn't show. It shows me the forwarder, which is FCA-DAT, and then it shows me the non-LOA. So basically that doesn't make any sense. So we'll take a look at that and clarify that because it definitely looks confusing. Absolutely. Okay. I always base my selection on the description and not the acronyms there. So that's why I never took a look at that. But thank you. Thank you guys both, because that's very important and I'm sure it confuses a lot of people. So I think that the explanation is clear in terms of we only plan when the FUs are packed properly. We can see how the packaging is done properly in TM based on the icon of the box, right? And also seeing that the packaging unit is there. We see how that impacts the SOW document, the estimated charges. We understand that when we're planning, we have to set up a planning profile properly. We also see that the estimation of the transportation that we selected here in the transportation proposals is not the one that is reflected in the SOW. And also that when you look at the charges for the FO documents, what you're looking at, if I click on it here, those that have been planned, if you look at the charges tab, you're basically looking at it depending on the calculation selection that you've made, whether by gross volume or by, and hold on one second. Okay, I was running out of voice there. You're looking at either the gross volume calculation or the calculation by lane or destination location. So you have to really understand the difference between the info that is provided in the SOW document and the freight orders, and the info that is provided when we're planning transportation for freight units. So basically, if we went to the cockpit again and I clicked on continue and I selected a freight unit and I was planning transportation, again, for these two that are still highlighted, remember the proposals that show up here, all of these are just estimations, okay? Proposals for transport, estimations of cost for transport, estimations of gross volume cost. And all we do is keep these estimations so we can cross-reference that data with actual data in the future. We're not telling freight forwarders or carriers how much it should cost us to transport the goods. This is information that we keep to ourselves and we cross-reference later on. We see the duration and distance. And remember, in the transportation cost, if you guys move on to the right, you also have the cost of transportation. That is the one that the system is giving you based on the selection you're making. But again, this is all estimation. So if I selected my first option here, and I'm going to actually go with this one, and I'm going to actually accept planning, and I'm going to save it, and I'm going to take a look at the freight order. So we see these here. I'm going to save that. And now this is going to transform into my freight order numbers. If I navigate to them, as I did before with those that were correctly packaged, these are incorrectly packaged, I can see the charges tab, and if everything was working properly, I would be able to see an estimated charge that is based on gross volume in this case, because this is the calculation base. Okay, that is the option that has been added here. The calculation is also performed differently. It's also performed by zone, by location. There's other calculations that are actually produced here, but in this case, see, we can reset the charges. The master data is based on the gross volume details that we added. If we go to the SOW, we're not going to see the price of the transportation or the estimation of the transportation. We're only going to see the cost of the goods, and we're going to see, if done properly, the dimension, weight, and volume of the goods if it was packaged properly. But in this case, it's not. And you see, at no point are we telling the carrier it's going to cost us this much to transport from the Hyundai Motor Company to the Mali shipping point. All we're telling them is where we need it from, where we need it to, the Incoterm, the goods being transported, and if done properly, the packaging material and the dimensions themselves. And it's only estimations. They're going to provide us with the actual price that we finally, as TS02s or TS08s, we're going to come in to the freight order charges tab, and we're going to update with the actual charges here of the ones that have been returned by the carrier freight forwarder. Okay, so I think that's enough for today's session because I'm already jumping into tomorrow's session. I hope that it was clear as to how we plan, what we should do when we plan properly, what do the estimated charges mean, what are the transportation proposal charges mean as well, the SOW, how it reflects accurate data, and why we do the packing and why it should be done properly before we start doing any planning in TM. Okay, that we also have to be smart when planning, that we can combine freight units, and what we're intending to is to optimize transportation and not just simply planning because the final result is just an estimation. Okay, in the long run, this estimation is what's going to help us to save on transportation cost. Okay, so thank you all for joining the session. I'm going to stop the recording now. And I'm also going to close the session.